Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about Trump's 100-day mark and the overall impact of all his just complete ransacking, destructive policies. Now, I don't normally focus on polls in particular and just the bottom line politics, but I think it's worthwhile here because we have, I think, a very strong message that sort of all the things they would boast with Republicans, the shock and awe campaign taken out of Project 2025. But what we have had is a really steady drumbeat of absolute assaults, grenades on the Constitution, absolute ignoring of and completely steamrolling legislative authority, a lot of disrespect for the courts, and still we're not out of the woods with the suggestion that the administration is simply going to ignore judicial orders. And then, of course, the bottom line, incredible mess on the ground that is prompting so much suffering and will prompt so much more. There are a lot of people who've had these bitter surprises, including maybe even disproportionately in red America, where they depend on the kinds of federal funds and programs that Trump is willy-nilly just, taking a buzzsaw to. But I think it's a fair bit worse than that because there's a pipeline effect. For example, most notably perhaps, the strangulation moves that he's doing on American universities. Those are, and the NIH, National Institute of Health, those are going to be realized in the weeks, months, years, I think, maybe even decade or more, on the development of new technology, life-saving measures, and just in a cross-cutting way, so much of the engine of American growth and prosperity has been in the partnership between universities and government, and that partnership has flourished because we've always been not just good at, but unsurpassed at drawing the best and the brightest from around the globe. So we're now treating those as, suspect immigrants who may not come in, but just in general, it really seems clear that that's been really, the legs have been cut out from under it. And you may have heard me say this before, but a datum that really strikes me. By far, the most Nobel Prizes come from Americans, but guess what? Over half of them have gone to people who were not born in the States, but came here to work at these, shining lights of universities that Trump is just extinguishing. Anyway, so I think there's an aggregate effect. I'm focused a lot on sort of issues of constitutional law, and there's some measure of, doubt or frustration. Oh, it's hard to bring home the separation of powers and constitutional crisis. But I think the overall impact of what's going on is really coming home. And so we're at the 100-day mark. We have a series of polls that are abysmal. Just go back a little bit to the campaign where, he was going to stop the Ukraine-Russia war in 24 hours. The economy was going to be fantastic in 24 hours. And by the way, it had been terrible under Biden. Lie after lie after lie. It seemed apparent to his opponents, but a lot of people bought the bill of goods, and a lot of people have been really disappointed. So, and especially independents, that's that all-important cohort of voters who took him to the presidency. Republicans still pretty strongly continue to support him, although a solid 10% give him an F, I believe, in a sort of A to F way. But the bigger point is huge voters blocks in the independent realm, and of course among Democrats give him the worst ever. So it's all around here, and the numbers are either the worst ever for a president after 100 days when you normally have some kind of honeymoon. What a terrible, sour non-honeymoon this has been. So he's either the lowest ever or 1 point above the lowest ever, which would be his first term. So, I mean, he is really doing abysmally. So, again, approval rating lower than for any, I'm just choosing the Washington Post, but there's the New York Times, Ipsos, many others. Lower than for any past president in their first or second terms, at least it says the Post. 52% approved of Biden, for example, at this stage of the 100 days. It's 42%. And just the individual cohorts, and in particular, so, he's always been driven to the base of his support has come up from white Americans. That's down 10%. He's down 13% among adults under age 30, and that again was really where his inroads had come from. 11%, 11 points among those who say they did not vote in November. Just another way of putting it in terms of A through F, twice as many people say that Trump deserves a grade of F rather than an A for how he's handled his first 100 days in office. That's a new NPR poll, and it's really dramatic among independent voters. So they have his approval rating at 36% among independents. Anything like those numbers means he would not have been elected. And then just a lot of other things about people who think, the economy is really going bad and prices are going to go bad, etc. And again, over half the country think we're on the wrong path. Even Republicans view him less well, and the overwhelming majority. One thing that jumped out at me: 85% of this country says he's got to follow court orders, even if he doesn't like them. Well, if he's bucking that's going to be cataclysmic for him and for the country. And then alongside these very low positive ratings, historically low, there's pretty high negative ratings, 54, 55%. Okay. I wanted to note that and give my sense of, the kind of cumulative impact of a lot of things that maybe don't hit home individually, but give an overall sense, and of course driven by the economy. And then just close up by saying how did Donald Trump handle these? So here we go. The polls from the fake news are fake. We are doing great, fake in all caps, great on caps, better than ever before. So, just straight up Orwellian lies. Really, it's, playbook that we've come to learn from him. But, initially it sort of stunned us. But here we go. For my supporters out there, just so you know, this is all fake. Everything's fake. It's the fake news media, and we are doing better than ever before. And don't you believe your high prices at the supermarket or your inability to buy a car or everything else that's happening, and the expiration of a study that was helping your family member with a terrible disease, etc. All of that, it's all fake. We are doing great, better than ever before. We are down the middle, bullseye epicenter of George Orwell land, as we've been since he took office. So this incredible disconnect between the facts and his words, but at least the words people are swallowing them with much less frequency than they were before. We'll see what that does. And I'll be especially focused, as I said, on this 85% figure. You better follow court orders and see if that makes it, just untenable for him to try to ignore the Supreme Court, a issue that may be building to a head in the AEA cases in particular, maybe Abrego Garcia, as I mentioned in another YouTube from today. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.